Hello and welcome back to Perspectives. On today's show, yet another democratic outrage unfolds in India as Amritpal Singh may be stripped of his Lok Sabha seat due to absence from the chamber. Absence, of course, due to his being detained without trial by the same government he stands in opposition to. Meanwhile, is that same government who happily flouts the rule of law when it comes to Sikhs about to try to demand Donald Trump deports Gurpatwant Singh Pannoon? And talking of Narendra Modi, his latest meeting with the Emir of Qatar seems to have forgotten about Indian workers. Those same lower caste Indians he befriended at election time and seems to have since abandoned. Nothing changes, eh? And finally, the name of Shahid Jaswant Singh Khalra lives on as the first public school ever in the United States gets named after someone of Sikh descent. All this and more on today's show, but joining me as always for Perspectives is our very own correspondent in Canada, James Cousineau. Good morning, James.
Good morning, Angus, and good morning to our viewers out there. I noticed just a whole onslaught of new comments and a lot of viewers out there, so we appreciate the support. And remember, keep sharing and letting your friends know about the show. This way they can be a part of it in our comment section and send story ideas as well. You guys know where to send the stories to us at message at savagetv.com. We look forward to hearing from you. Thanks for joining us once again. Angus, back to you.
We most certainly do. And James and I together will be bringing you our perspectives today on the daily news affecting the Sikh community across the world. And we will indeed, of course, as usual, take a look at loads of great comments at the end of the show. So stay tuned for that. Right, James, let's get the show underway. What are you going to start us off with this morning?
It appears that Amritpal Singh is going to be back in court. And he is looking to get another pass to make it out to the Lok Sabha. Now, what's happening now is what I think the government had been planning for, the BJP and others, is to have him miss the 60 days in the parliament or in the political sphere, because at that point his seat is declared vacant. And at that point, of course, they have to hold a by-election. And this could be very much what they planned in order to oust him from his position without actually taking any drastic steps on their own side. However, it should be noted that Amritpal has, of course, been locked up. He cannot make it by choice. It has been a forced absence, and he has been locked up, as we know, in the sorry, I probably mispronounced that. But in any event, he's been locked up in that central jail under the National Security Act, and this has been going on for some time. Now, as I said, he has missed 46 days of the Parliament, and at that point he has been summoned by the administration and told that if he does not attend, then of course he will be, that seat gets named as vacant and they'll have to have the by-election. So this comes as a big concern because of course we know that he was voted in with over 400,000 votes, which in his region is actually quite substantial, and that is an excellent voter response to support him, and yet he remains locked up without the ability to work towards the goals that he wanted for his region. One of those, of course, was development, looking at developing whether it was trade and commerce or assisting with farmers, and also big on his list was dealing with the drug epidemic that is in the region. We know that the drug problem is actually... Excuse me, sorry about that, folks. The drug problem has been just a major problem there in all of India, but especially in the Punjab, where it is free-flowing and almost to a point where we would say that the government's allowance for this to be such a heavy burden has actually been intentional and deliberate in order to weaken the region within itself. So we need to look at whether or not the courts are going to grant him the opportunity to show up at the parliament so that he doesn't pass the 60-day threshold. Now, the courts can make that decision, and of course he has previously applied because the administration has notified him previously that he needs to attend. And of course with that problem is that without him attending in the House and without the court order, then the BJP wins, they get the by-election, and chances are that they will find a way to fill his seat with one of their own. In terms of what he's done so far, as I said, he has applied previously, but again, the courts did not respond to his previous petitions in the High Court and let it just sit. So now they are stating that they will take the matter before the courts and hear it in the near future. But whether or not they actually get to it within the time structure allowed is, of course, the bigger concern. What happens next is that, as I said, they are expected to hear it soon. If it rules in his favor, he could be allowed to attend the Parliament. However, this does not mean that he will be released from custody permanently. This is only a special provision that would allow him to go to Parliament, Angus. And of course, it leaves his whole riding unrepresented. So with that, as I said, they aren't getting the representation in Parliament. They are not getting the development processes moving forward. They don't have an advocate to look out for them within Parliament or within the business realm. And that, of course, as we know, is a major problem, Angus.
Yes, this actually unfolds a very interesting legal conundrum in India. Playing devil's advocate to start with, the process of democracy does require an elected member of any parliament in a normal democracy to attend. It's a protective mechanism because basically the people of a constituency must have their voices heard within that elected body. In that elected chamber, and if their representative doesn't attend, then they have every right to demand that he is stripped of that position. Now, that isn't a perfect scenario. However, of course, the reason that Amritpal is unable to attend his seat is, as his legal team correctly say, it is because he is prevented by state action. In other words, it is a third party. It is outside of his control. So this sets up a very interesting legal situation. His legal team will be arguing, of course, he's being prevented to attend his due process by state action, and therefore they will argue that he should be allowed to attend in whatever format. Now, there may be a compromise here. One could be optimistic and say, okay, well, the government say, okay, once every 60 days, we will release you for a day to discharge that legal problem, and the legal problem just basically goes away. He retains his seat, etc., etc. Now, that does assume that the Indian state, the Indian government, let's say, are willing to play ball. Now, in reality, let's look at the reality on the ground here. The reason that Amritpal Singh is detained is because he's an enemy of the BJP, the RSS. He is the enemy of, essentially, Narendra Modi. He's a political prisoner, which means he is detained without trial, indefinitely, and the whole process of the normal process of the rule of law has been flouted and has been ignored for political expediency. So there is no way that the Indian government are going to play ball. They're not going to make it easy for him. So this means the onus now is on the legal team of Amritpal to find a way through this, to firstly retain his seat and obviously then get him out of jail. Now, this does actually put the judiciary in a very, very interesting position here. The Indian judiciary, who are going to hear this case, they are essentially going to have to take sides. Now, if they look at this impartially, which I suspect they probably won't, it is likely that they will rule in favour of Amritpal Singh's team. However, we have seen increasingly so in India that the judiciary is becoming infiltrated by BJP and RSS placemen, and therefore is becoming increasingly politicised, as we've seen in the case, whether it refers to J&K or other arbitrary detentions. They unfortunately are ruling in favour of Narendra Modi's government for political reasons rather than legal reasons. So we cannot unfortunately totally rely on the impartiality of Indian law. Therefore, it is likely that they may rule against Amritpal Singh, which once again will be a very sad sign, an indication of the declining democracy within India and the declining rule of law. So, it does mean that Narendra Modi and his government are playing a lot of dirty tricks in this campaign.
That's right.
They've not only detained Amritpal Singh under very questionable grounds, he remains in jail indefinitely as a message to all his political enemies. It's an appalling situation. Which means that Amritpal Singh's legal team are going to have to play equally dirty. They're going to have to find a way around this. So let's look at worst case scenario. Let's say he loses his case and he's going to lose his seat. It means there's going to have to be a by-election, a new election within his constituency. So it does mean they're going to have to find a way around this. Now, we mustn't forget that he was elected with a massive majority. It was something like 200,000 majority in his constituency. So it does mean then that it's likely, unless more dirty tricks and underhand tactics go on in the constituency voting, the voting is rigged, it's likely that if Amritpal Singh can find a replacement for him, who stands exactly on the same ticket, essentially becomes, let's say, a puppet of Amritpal Singh. He basically does as he is told by Amritpal. That person can stand. He will win that constituency, and Narendra Modi essentially loses. All he's done is managed to control Amritpal Singh, but he's been replaced by somebody else. But that means that you need to replace him with somebody else who stands for everything that Amritpal Singh stands for. That's going to be hard to find somebody. There is also an almost farcical route, and this is down to the legal team to find a bit of a dirty tricks, clever way of doing this. It is not unknown in democratic countries, and it does depend on the specific wording of the law. But for example, here in the UK, many years ago, in a mayoral election, a democratic election for a mayor, it wasn't for a member of parliament, but it was for a mayor, which it was another step down. A monkey was elected. A monkey was put up for election and he was elected. I think it was the town of Hartlepool. And this monkey became mayor of this city for many years. Is there a way for the legal team to work through the wording, the specific wording? Is there anything that prevents something like, for example, a monkey to be elected as the Member of Parliament for that constituency in replacement of Amritpal Singh? You think of the symbolic act, if they could get away with something like that, and they mobilise the people of his constituency to elect, for example, a monkey to become a member of the Lok Sabha in place of Amritpal Singh, you think what a message that sends out to the world. What a farcical message of the Indian democratic process that will send. It will highlight, it will focus the world's press immediately on that situation. I hope the legal team can find a way to make a farce of this democratic process and somehow use an example like that, if they can find a way that if Narendra Modi wins this legal battle, he loses the war, because Amritpal's legal team can find a way to do something like that and make a mockery of the system if it then goes to a by-election. You think of the message that would send, James. That would be very, very powerful.
Absolutely, and let's face it, what parliament doesn't have monkeys in it?
Exactly, yeah.
But the bright side, Angus, is that we actually covered a story a while back, and some wild monkeys actually prevented a rape there in India. So, I mean, the monkeys are already being more helpful and doing a better job than some of the law enforcement there. So, you know, maybe that's not such a bad thing. But at the end of the day, the truth being, in all honesty, without jokes, is that Amritpal has been locked up. They seem to be able to get him these applications before the magistrates and before the courts in order to get these temporary leaves. But the real question is, why have they not brought him before the justice to actually resolve the matter and to have it finalized to get him out? I mean, at the end of the day, he is an elected official who has been given a mandate by his constituents, and by blocking him, they are, putting the whole system of democracy, at a disadvantage. So, James, with any luck, they will, look at bringing him in. And
yeah, sorry to jump in there, James. I totally agree with what you're saying, and I've actually thoughts just occurred to me as we speak, and it just refers to one of our commenters, and it's just got my mind thinking. The Indian legal system, according to one of our commenters, has recognised that the Guru Granth Sahib Ji, the holy scriptures of the Sikh religion, are legally recognised as a living being. Therefore, legally, a copy of the Guru Granth Sahib Ji could be in an election put up as a candidate. And I hope somebody can inform the legal team for Amritpal Singh of this situation, because if it goes to another election, they could legally put the Guru Granth Sahib Ji up as the candidate for that constituency in that by-election. Again, you imagine if the people are mobilised to vote for the Guru Granth Sahib Ji, what a message that would send. Sorry to interrupt, James. I had to say that.
Oh, that's okay, Angus. Yeah, no, that's a great perspective and a great analysis there, because that would be a real message and a real slap in the face to the BJP and anybody else that wants to stand in the way of Amritpal, and then to have that happen would be, yeah, as you said, just a massive landmark statement made by that process. So, yeah, that is a very interesting approach to it. So, as we move on, Angus, of course, we know that India and Qatar are back in talks. They have the 2-day conference going on with bilateral trade and other issues that are being raised. But again, as we spoke of yesterday, we did not anticipate a big change happening in terms of addressing the foreign worker problem that faces Qatar and other Middle Eastern states as well. And that is, of course, the lack of the enforcement of the workers' rights, whether that comes to safety, whether it comes to actually getting paid, when it comes to worker abuse and violence and other issues that have been raised. Modi seems to be really taking a back step or a back seat when it comes to dealing with these human rights in Qatar. And it may be that he doesn't want to be seen himself to be pushing a double standard, because, of course, the U.S. should have also pushed for human rights to be respected in India. And with those talks last week, we didn't see a word mentioned by Donald Trump or his entourage when it came to pushing for human rights respects in terms of whether it's Sikhs, Muslims, or any other minorities within India. But the bright side is that the Indian and Qatar delegates have come together, and they're working on a new trade agreement that brings actually over $28 billion in trade over the next 5 years. And that is a big jump. That's almost double what it's at now. So it really represents a huge jump in the opportunities for both Qatarian and Indian businesses to increase their trade. And of course, we know that a lot of that will go to those that are high up in the caste system, a lot of the friends of Modi when it comes to, different businesses. But Reliant is also in there, so that's good because they have more of a representation of all people as opposed to just the Modi group. So that is great there. Some of the areas, of course, that they're seeing huge investment and increases in trade. We know that liquid propane gas and liquid natural gas are huge when it comes to exports and imports and vice versa. So that really will be increased, as well as other areas such as artificial intelligence, robotics, machine learning, and other technologies. Telecommunications has been a big one as well. So we're going to see that trade increase. But again, I think that they're missing the opportunity to push for human rights and worker rights. As they continue to meet in New Delhi, one of the things that we covered last night was Narendra Modi actually breaking from tradition and meeting the Emir on the tarmac as his plane arrived. And that was too much fanfare. They had some interesting little demonstrations there that represented Qatar. And of course, we go back to the long trade and long partnerships that the two countries have shared. Now, Qatar has the largest in terms of their diaspora communities within Qatar. The Indian diaspora represents the largest one by far. And of course, that means that it is in their best interest to work together and to increase trade. But at the same time, to make sure that those lines of communication are open, because the Qatarian people do credit the Indian people with a lot of the advances in development. And that goes right down, again, from the bottom line workers right through to the technology and the imports that they have. Now, going the other way, it will be a lot of food, farm equipment, farming goods, not so much equipment. There's not a whole lot of farming going on in Qatar overall. But again, it is about boosting that economic cooperation. It is about increasing the trade. And again, we know that this is a big area for Modi to increase, because we've seen the Indian, the economy kind of stemmy a bit and stall. So this is a way for him to give it a boost and to help to bring more employment to India. And we know that that is a big issue. There were talks last week when Modi was when he was in the U.S., he did hold some talks with Elon Musk. And at that time, they denied that there was any real business talking, that it was more about two mutual friends getting together and talking about just, technology or space, and that on more of a friend-to-friend basis. But now it turns out that Elon Musk is also looking to restore investments and the expansion plan within India for the Tesla cars, as well as talking about space and other advances there in technology. So it's interesting to see, but at the same time, as I said, the India government is really pushing for that expansion of trade on the global level, and we'll have to watch and see how that plays. And as much as we say that, the worker rights in Qatar need to be addressed, so do the human rights issues in India. And I think that a lot of countries and a lot of businesses are missing out on the opportunity to put a bit of extra pressure on Modi to address that. Now, that's not to say that they haven't been pushing either way. Between the Modi and Qatar talks and the Modi and U.S. President Trump talks, there could be conversations going on behind closed doors that in saving face and reputation for Modi, that they are not bringing out publicly in order to not embarrass him. And that could be a real truth as well, because at the end of the day, when you're talking and negotiating, the last thing you want to do is insult the people that you are trying to find an agreement with, that you're trying to find an increase to bilateral trade. And at the end of the day, you want to benefit your country, and you don't want to take away from the negotiations or future negotiations and future official visits. The last time the Emir of Qatar was in India was almost next month. It would have been 10 years. So it shows that it has been a long time, and that needs to be, ramped up. And that's, I think we'll see Modi heading to Qatar in the next year as well for an official state visit.
Yes, it's funny, isn't it, James, how when it comes to trade, dollars, commerce, human rights just so often just gets brushed under the carpet. And
right.
Qatar is actually is well known for its abuse of human rights. I mean, we had the whole World Cup football debacle a while ago, right. And I'm not a follower of football, but certainly what I did pick up there was that Qatar, I think, won the World Cup under very questionable circumstances, and there was an awful lot of accusations across social media saying, well, it's clear that the brown envelopes have been passing backwards and forwards, very large brown envelopes, because, of course, when we look at Qatar's human rights records relating to various elements, whether it's LGBT or whether it's its workers' rights, they have a pretty tarnished background. And of course, many in the democratic West have said, well, why are we giving a country like Qatar some, the prestige of a huge sporting event when, of course, it's got these massive human rights abuses issues? Well, because of dollars, it comes down to dollars. And here we are again, Narendra Modi signing up all sorts of incredibly powerful trade deals. Absolutely, why shouldn't he as a leader of a nation? But of course, Narendra Modi comes to the table with an equal basket of human rights abuses, as we talk about on a daily basis. So here we've got two nations tying up massive multi-billion-dollar deals. which is great. It makes great headlines, but underneath both of them have really got a slightly embarrassing record when it comes to human rights. So we cannot be surprised in the slightest that any mention of Indian workers, the poor lower caste cannon fodder, they're never going to enter the equation. Why should they? Why should they get in the way of the upper caste making more money? And of course they're not. So it's very unlikely, and I think it was an unlikely and unreasonable expectation for any of us to expect that the poor lower caste workers would ever get a say in these trade deals. So unfortunately, James, it's great to see world trade developing. It's great to see nations getting along. It's great to see trade deals like this improving the flow of global development, the global GDP, etc., etc. But underneath, let's not forget the human cost, and that human cost, of course, is these poor lower caste workers from India who end up in places like the Middle East, whether it's the UAE, whether it's Qatar or wherever. And they lose their life on a regular basis. They're leaving their wives, they're leaving their children behind in India, and they're sending back their pittance of pay back to India. And in the process, they're risking their life, they're risking their limbs, they're risking life-changing injuries. And the only people who are benefiting from this are the likes of the upper caste, whether it's the upper caste in India or whether it's a wealthy elite in Doha, in Qatar. Unfortunately, James, that is the situation. All we can do is highlight what's going on there.
Absolutely, Angus. And I mean, when you look at the Indian diaspora, as I touched on, being the largest in Qatar, right now it's estimated that there are about 700,000 Indians living within that country, and that makes up about 21.8% of their total population there. And in context, I mean, there's 35 million estimated Indians living in countries outside of India. And of that, the biggest diaspora anywhere would be in the U.S., where it's an approximately 5 million Indians who live in the U.S., and to be more exact, it's about 5.4 million. And that doesn't factor in the estimated 200,000 Indians that are living illegally in the U.S. either. So it just shows in context. I mean, they've got a lot of population within Qatar, and to overlook the abuses against the Indian population in Qatar, I think, is quite disgusting when you look at the numbers.
It's a tragedy. It's a human tragedy unfolding, and again, it's the ruling elites who once again just don't care, and they just carry on making their billions anyway. Right.
And that's just it, Angus. And just out of fairness, once again, I just do want to bring up that, yes, we do have worker abuses in Canada when it comes to foreign workers as well. Companies have been fined and the government has been cracking down, but there's still a lack of enforcement officers and a lack of teeth when it comes to the bite that they actually get when they are caught breaking the laws, whether that's safety, whether it's monetary or otherwise. So, yeah, I just thought I'd bring that up because I want to make sure that I'm fair to everybody, because in the US, Canada, the UK, there are worker abuses happening as well, Angus.
Indeed they are, James, but at least here in the West, we do hold our employers to account, and employers do go to jail on a regular basis when they abuse the Indian diaspora. So that is a huge difference. So, but anyway, let's move on, James. Let's move on to my first story. And I'm going to talk about Jaswant Singh Khalra once more, one of our favourite firebrands who we bring to the show on a regular basis. Now, I'm going to share a little bit of his video, but his latest video is actually quite interesting because it does actually raise a few interesting points. It follows on in the usual vein, the same vein as Jaswant always pronounces it in his bombastic way, in his very fiery way. Let me just play you the first part of his latest video, which always makes entertaining viewing. Let me just quickly play you this.
वाहेगुरु जी का खालसा वाहेगुरु जी की फतेह. Modi's India is prematurely celebrating the meeting with President Trump. If Canadian citizen Tuhawar Rana's case is being handled on the basis that India practices torture, citing Shaheed Talvinder Singh Parmar's case, who was brutally tortured to death in 1992, it is highly unlikely that Rana will be extradited to India anytime soon. We must also pay homage to Shahid Parmar, who was accused of Air India bombing, but has a steadfast campaign for Khalistan. Additionally, Modi-backed media is already disseminating disinformation that once Rana is extradited, India's next target is going to be Panu. India, let me make very clear to you, and with my ardas, I'm ready to sacrifice my life advocating for liberation of Punjab from Indian occupation through Khalistan referendum. No force of Modi's India can ever arrest or capture me alive. I'm ready to take India's bullets for Khalistan referendum campaign. Now my question is to Modi's India.
Okay, so there's quite a bit there in that first section which I just want to pick up on. I mean, again, he's really laying down the gauntlet to India. So basically, just have a go if you think you're hard enough. He said, "I'm quite prepared to die. I'm prepared to take your bullets, but it doesn't matter. You're never going to stop me." So he's really he's laying down that gauntlet to the RSS. But what is referred to here, and this is where it starts getting interesting, he's referred to this recent case of Tawar Rana. Now, this was brought up in the press conference when Modi was in the US meeting Donald Trump. And in that press conference, the Govt media, when they stood up to answer their various questions, particularly about Khalistan, and trying to entice Trump to condemn the Khalistan movement, they all brought up this case of saying, "Thank you very much for agreeing to deport Tawar Rana." And this was, he was the guy, the Pakistan national, who was alleged to be involved in the Mumbai attacks of 2008, terrorist attacks. Now, what he's then said, what Jaswant Singh Khalra has said, look, you know, the US has, on the face of it, agreed to extradite Tawar Rana back to India. But actually, it hasn't been fully agreed yet, and there's a likelihood that it won't be finally agreed legally because, and he cites Shahid Bhai Talwinder Singh Parmar. Now, Shahid Bhai Talwinder Singh Parmar, he was allegedly involved in the Air India bombing. And his story, and it's quite a long story, which we don't have time to go into, but in a nutshell, in short, he was a Khalistani fighter. He was in the Punjab during the terrible times of 1984 and beyond, and he was part of that fight back against the Indian state. He was very active in the rising up of the Sikhs at the time against this brutality of the Indian state. Now, he fled to Canada, he fled to Europe at the time. He was actually arrested in Germany, and he was imprisoned in Germany because of India issued an Interpol, an international arrest warrant. So Germany detained him, but they released him after about 18 months, saying, well, there is actually no case to answer. He then went to Canada and he spoke about, Singh Khalra, Jaswant Singh Khalra, in the same way. He spoke out publicly in Canada about what India had been up to, about the murder, the extrajudicial killings. And eventually he found his way back into India at the time, and lo and behold, he was caught by the Indian authorities. He was brutally tortured, and then he was killed. He was extrajudicially killed in a fake encounter. So he was once again another one of these victims of India's fake encounters. And Jaswant Singh Khalra has brought up his story publicly again to say, look, if you think that you're going to successfully deport Tawar Rana, then all we need to do is cite this case of Bhai Talwinder Singh, this case of Bhai Talwinder Singh Parmar, who was known to have been tortured and murdered in 1992. Legally, we can prevent this extradition because we'll just say, well, under our law, we cannot extradite somebody back to their country if we know they're going to be tortured. And as your track record has proved, you torture your prisoners. So that was an interesting interpretation. It will be interesting to see if indeed that the deportation of Tawar Rana is successful or not based on this legal thing. And of course, this link to the Air India bombing, we talk about this regularly on a regular basis, James, is that we believe that there is more to the Air India bombing than meets the eye. We don't think it was a Sikh community. It was actually a false flag by Indian intelligence. Now, he then, in this video, he also then goes on to talk about the Khalistan referendum. Of course, as he always does, he is one of the founders of the referendum, and he's referring it to say it is coming up again. This next iteration of the campaign is coming up, and he does actually again lay down the gauntlet, and he says to the Modi government, he says, "Are you and your government ready to sacrifice your lives to stop the Khalistani referendum, to stop the balkanization of India, and to stop disintegration of India by 2047? Despite a staged bear hug at the White House, Mr. Modi," and of course he then shows a picture of Modi hugging Donald Trump, "the writing is on the wall." Now, he's picked this year of 2047 for the balkanization, basically the breakup of India. Why 2047? I don't know. There's no explanation. The only thing I can think of is, of course, that is the centenary of partition, 1947. So I suspect that he's picked this date as a pretty arbitrary date, but it is the century anniversary, 100 years to the day of partition. Now, of course, 2047 sounds an awful long way away. Actually, it's not. It's only, 22 years away, which will go in the blink of an eye. But we believe, actually, the balkanization of India may happen well before then. And we think Khalistan is going to happen in the foreseeable future. Once Khalistan happens, then it is likely that all the other dominoes will fall very quickly. So it could happen well before 2047. And then he continues to say that Modi's political death is unstoppable. It is inevitable. Sikhs for Justice believes in a democratic process to liberate Punjab from Indian occupation. And then he does say that the next phase of the referendum is on the 23rd of March in Los Angeles, the land of the free and the home of the brave, United States of America. So again, once again, he's highlighting this complete difference between India and the United States, where the US is, of course, the land of the free, home of the brave. It is the beacon of democracy as opposed to India. He talks about the Sikh farmers, and he actually says he will dedicate the Khalistan referendum in Los Angeles to Sikh farmers who, as he says, are facing an existential threat at the hands of Modi's India, and they are being forced to commit suicide as a result. And then he signs off. He says also on the 23rd of March, he urges pro-Khalistani American Sikhs that he will be disseminating information on how to join the US Army. And he says, get trained from the best. Go join the army. Get trained by the best army in the world to defend one day your own land. So again, this call to arms to join the US Army, get the training that you need, because one day you will need that training to join the army of Khalistan. And then he signs off to say, Khalistan Sikhs for Justice wields the most potent weapon of the century, the ballot, not the bomb, the vote, not the violence. And then he basically once again sticks, as we say in England, sticks two fingers up to Narendra Modi, or in the US would say sticks one finger, the single finger, up to Narendra Modi. So I would say yes, the typical bombastic, fiery language from Gurpratap Singh Pannoon. But as always, James, there's a lot of very serious undercurrents there, some very serious messages under there. Again, powerful words from Gurpratap Singh Pannoon.
Well, we always enjoy his little moments there, because he always brings such an energy with him, and I think that is something that definitely has helped to build the base with the media, for the simple fact that media wants entertainment more than they want actual facts these days, it appears. And believe me, he comes with such an energy that he's able to incorporate the facts with that energy, with that entertainment factor, and really gets the people talking. And that is what it's all about. It's about raising that awareness. It's about having that presence and keeping himself relevant, which he definitely has a knack for doing. And in bringing up, of course, Mr. Parmar, who was allegedly killed in 1992 in a gun battle back in India after he had returned, whether or not that is the case or if he was just another victim of extrajudicial killings within the state there, that's, still up for debate. But at the end of the day, he stood for his beliefs. And we got to remember that the 80s and 90s were a different time and a different era when it came to not only the Khalistan movement, but in terms of geopolitical violence and the level of violence that was being perpetrated against the Sikhs as well. And so they were in a self-defensive mode. They weren't going out and being the aggressor. They were trying to defend their culture, their people, their history, and most importantly, their lives. And I think that's something that people really need to keep in mind, is how much oppression, violence, and just the racism that they faced even within their own country, Angus.
Indeed, and I have to say, well done to Jaswant Singh Khalra. It is very easy to sort of treat him with a little bit of disdain because of his delivery style. But as always, his message underneath, the underlying message, is always extremely powerful. As I often say, he knows exactly what he's doing, and I think his tactics are very deliberate. I think his style is very deliberate. Yes, of course, that is him to a T. He loves his rhetoric, but I think his style is very deliberate. He knows the audience that he's appealing to, and I think it really does work. So, okay, let's move on to a really good news story. This is a fabulous story that's just come out of California, Fresno in California. This is in Fresno's Central Unified School District. A new school, a new public school is being opened, and I'm delighted to say it will be named after Jaswant Singh Khalra. It will be known as the Jaswant Singh Khalra Elementary School. And it's going to be the first public school in North America to be named after a person of Sikh descent. So this is a fantastic development. Now, of course, we talked a lot about Jaswant Singh Khalra. He originally, as we said, but just to remind anybody who might not know who he was a bank director based in Amritsar in the early 90s. He noticed that some of his colleagues stopped showing up for work at that time. He did, in fact, investigate their disappearances. And as a result, he actually he gathered the evidence of 25,000 or more cases of illegal murders and cremations by Punjab police. So, of course, he then created this massive documentary portfolio of evidence to condemn the Indian state for these extrajudicial killings, which, of course, made him a target of the Indian state. And despite the fact, and he sensed that his own life was in danger, he carried on continuing this investigation. And as he said at the time, I will challenge the darkness, even if I am just that one candle, that one light. And those were the words that he said in one of his last speeches. And he did, in fact, address the Canadian Parliament just before he himself was arrested. He was detained by Punjabi police, he was tortured, and then he himself was extrajudicially killed in an absolute outrage once again. So, and that was in 1995. Now, Khalra's family actually did have ties to Fresno itself. His own daughter, Navkaran Kaur Khalra, is a Fresno State alumna who now works in the Bay Area. Her husband's family is from the Central Valley. And she said, for me and for many of our South Asian community members, he's absolutely a person of admiration because his life is a story of loyalty and friendship, integrity, courage and principle. His daughter attended Fresno State, his family resides in our district, and probably thousands of our families here in the Fresno area were able to seek refugee asylum because of his work. In Fresno County, there are roughly 1,700 current students in the district who identify as Punjabi or Southeast Asian descent. That's about 10.5% of the student population. And the district estimates Punjabi students will make up 9% of the new elementary school's enrolment. And the Punjabi community members said naming the school after Khalra marked a historic moment. Of course it is, it's massive this. As Nav Gurm, a community advocate running for a seat on the Fresno City Council, said, I think it's the rich diversity that makes Fresno so special, and for the Sikh community, this is one more step in feeling Fresno like home. And which is, I mean, again, it's a fabulous good news story, this. I just want to play just a little section of, this is ABC, one of their local news channels, who cover this story. So, of course, the story did, of course, reach the local mainstream news. And let me just play you just a little bit of this story, just to give you a little bit of background as well from a local perspective.
Those in favor, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
The newest Central Unified School District Elementary School will now be named after Jaswant Singh Khalra. It comes after a unanimous vote at Tuesday night's board meeting, with one member abstaining. Board President Nandeep Singh says Mr. Khalra is an icon for the Punjabi community in the Central Valley, adding that Khalra's daughter went to Fresno State and his family resides in the area.
A person who was fighting against government oppression and ultimately paid the ultimate price.
Singh says Khalra was a director of a bank during the militancy period, but soon became known globally for his work as a human rights activist. This is video of the final speech he gave in 1995, shortly before he was killed, where he discusses the illegal killings of others that he discovered.
Over 2,000 bodies the Punjab police had murdered and then just cremated, just burned the bodies without even providing any information and labeling them as identified. As he had actually this particular data, he started sharing this overseas, going to Canada, the UK, sharing in front of the UN, in front of the EU and other parliaments.
District Superintendent Ketty Davis says she knows this school will give families in the community someone to relate to.
The pride in that, I think, is going to be really exciting to hear stories from and connections from, because it really does connect into a growing population in our community.
And at last night's board meeting, they also named the first principal for the school. That will be current Roosevelt Elementary Principal Raul Diaz. Superintendent Davis says she's looking forward to this, as many of the Roosevelt students will be the first to attend the new school. At the live desk, Brianna Willis, ABC 30 Action News.
So fabulous news. It's a great story, but I think the really important point here, and this is really significant, is of course this puts down a marker in society, because forevermore now, as long as that school exists and it retains that name, people are always going to ask, who was this guy? Who was this Khalra guy? And it means people are then going to look and research who Khalra was. So that means forevermore people are going to relive this story, and they're going to understand what Khalra stood for, and certainly what Khalra highlighted, that evil actions of the Indian government during the 1980s and 1990s. And it means that those actions will not be forgotten. It will be reminded to each new generation who then at that school, and of course the local society, they will all understand what went on. So it means, once again, how important these markers are in society. These put permanent or near permanent markers that will forevermore ensure that what happened in India, in the Punjab at that time, will never be forgotten, James.
Absolutely, Angus. And in this day and age, in the U.S. especially, we've seen a lot of removal of historic statues, of historic names being changed. And, of course, we know recently Fort Bragg the name was brought back to Fort Bragg by the new administration at the White House. But again, it is such a valuable honor, I believe, that they finally really recognized someone for their human rights fight and the documentation of history in such a way that it could have been that, the Hindutva or other parties, that they could have opposed this naming of the school. And in today's environment, I think that the school district would have caved. So for the whole community to come together and support that name, I think is a great honor, especially in today's day and age when they're trying to whitewash a lot of history, Angus.
Absolutely right. And how often do we, when we wander around, when we're on holiday or whatever, we see a plaque with somebody's name that we've never heard of, and then underneath is usually a brief explanation, and you go, wow, I never knew that.
That's right.
Well, that's what's going to happen forevermore at this school. People are going to say, who was this Khalra guy? And then they will read, because somewhere I'm sure there'll be an explanation of who he was and what he represented, and people will go, wow, I didn't know that. And that is why this message will be so powerful. His legacy is again, so powerful. So it's fantastic to see. So well done to Fresno for that. Well done to the local community for that achievement. That's fantastic news. Right, James, let's move on then to our comment section. And our first comment, again, I'm going to dedicate to one of our, has become one of our regular contributors. This is Danny. And again, we covered a very interesting comment that he did yesterday related to the Pakistan side of Punjab, which we talked in detail. And his comment that he left after one of our yesterday's videos, or videos from a couple of days ago, again, equally interesting, and again brings up quite another interesting area that I'd like just quickly spend a minute or two on. And again, he does talk about the Pakistan thing, and actually I think overnight he left a similar comment after yesterday's video, but I just want to pick up on this one. And this brings up, and I'm a great lover of conspiracy theories, which is why I find this comment particularly interesting, because it actually aligns with things that I've noticed, and I think we've talked about on a regular basis, James. And he says India and USA got 500 billion trade stretching into 2030. Trump is tactical. He's right-wing, but so's Modi. And he then says that the left pendulum is shifting globally to the right. So this pendulum, as we're noticing, is shifting to the right. It started in the US. In future, it will come to Europe. I would actually say, no, it's already in Europe now. If you look at European politics, Germany is very swiftly switching to the right. The AfD are massively increasing their vote. We've got an election coming up in just a few days where the AfD is expected to make massive gains to the right wing. We're seeing it in France, likewise, the other powerhouse of Europe, and we're seeing Le Pen's party massively gaining power, gaining votes as well. So we are seeing this, whether it's Hungary as well, right across Europe, there is this massive swing to the right. This is a backlash after it swung massively to the left over the last decade or two. So yeah, I think, but you're right in that respect. And you're saying, maybe a petition convenient for a return of West Marjar, Pakistan, Punjab. So that comes back to that whole Pakistan, Punjab discussion. But then he said, ask current occupants to vacate on future agreed time. And again, you're talking about the tactics to do that. But then you come back to this point. Trump is all about money, and so is Modi. Yes, they are. In fact, Modi is not a one-man machine. Behind him, there's probably 20 more. Yes, this Brahmanical wealthy elite of India that you're referring to. And what we talk about, James, this wealthy elite in India. Behind Trump are big business backers as well. It's all about big corporations. It's about consortiums. That's what international armies represent. Prime ministers, leaders are just the front of it. Yes, this is so true. I would not take Trump lightly when he says something. He will do it. Absolutely, he does. Everything is governed by which way the pendulum swings. Biden's left politics likely finished, but in future, UK left-wing politics will finish. How right you are. Starmer's government, unfortunately, I'm afraid, I know the Sikh community are big supporters of the Labour Party, but I'm not a supporter of the Labour Party as it stands. I think they do not represent the working class. I don't think they actually represent the Sikh community. I know the Sikh community think otherwise. I disagree. I think you've been betrayed and are being betrayed by Starmer's government. He represents something very different. He represents, I think, what the Conservative Party on the right wing represent: big business, wealthy backers, wealthy elite. And I think that is unfolding. But as Danny rightly points out, there will be a swing to the right here in the UK as well. What's in the US today comes to the UK scene. I think you're right. And I wonder if, Danny, you're based in the UK based on this. When Europe follows, borders go back up. Yes, the borders will come back up. The New World Order is being rolled out. It's all about gaining more control, a tighter grip over our society. And politicians from different countries are aligning through right-wing politics and their shared interests. Basically, it's all about the wealthy elite taking control. They've had rehearsals. This is not a random event flow. So, James, there's an awful lot in this comment, but basically picking it or rolling it up into one single conspiracy theory. It's all about the right wing taking control, the New World Order bringing about new control. It's this wealthy elite who are sucking up the wealth from the ordinary people, and with that wealth they are taking more and more control of our society. That's what this is all about, James. It is the unification of the right wing in India, whether it's Trump's right wing wealthy elite or whether it's European wealthy elite. They are all rolling out the New World Order, James.
Absolutely, Angus. And I mean, we can see that here in Canada too, where there was such a shift of the pendulum went in favor of Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives. And unfortunately, what's happened recently is that pendulum is swung back because of what people are seeing in the U.S. and that whole, the way the whole package is unfolded there. So people are actually pushing back and going back towards the Liberals. So again, we'll have to wait and see. And that's probably why the Liberals want to push for a snap election in Canada once they decide on a new leader for the Liberals. Because I think that once things calm down, the dust settles, I think that Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives can actually bring that back on their side once things calm down a bit.
Absolutely. So Danny, I think, is one of the few people, and I would count myself amongst them, who seem to be capable of taking 10 steps back and looking at the bigger picture. And as Danny points out, the bigger picture is unfolding before our very eyes, and people need to wake up to what is going on. Is that there does seem to be this, let's call it the New World Order, as it seems to have been labelled by many conspiracy theorists. But basically, there is a tighter control of our society. It's all about digital IDs. It's all about, eventually, as many people saying, we will all be effectively barcoded. We will just become numbers in a great machine, tightly controlled by a ruling elite. So I think that is the implications of this comment. And I have to say, I don't disagree with it. It's up to all of us, because of course we outnumber them by a very large margin. It is up to the people to stop anything like this unfolding. This essentially, it's undemocratic. It is up to the people to rise up and prevent it happening. So thank you, Danny, for your fascinating comment and all its implications. Right, okay, let's change the subject now and let's get back to Punjab. Guru Stock Investing, rather mischievously, says Jesus is coming and he's taking over Punjab. Good heavens. Hallelujah. Everyone loves Jesus in Punjab now. Well, I think Guru Stock Investing, I'm not entirely sure that everyone in Punjab is a lover of Jesus, but certainly I'm sure they respect your religion. Ashley Kandar, I'm delighted to see, makes a return on this and says, yes, what came first, the chicken or the egg, Jesus or some guru? But Balda Mohar responds, well, better than Hindus, as Christian believes in one God. Yeah, well, at least the Christians only have one God, where the Hindus, I think, have a whole pantheon of gods or idols that they worship. And then Bal Singh responds, why do you go to Manipur and save your Christian brother and sisters there and get them relocated? Of course, the dreadful persecution of the Christians in Manipur and all those churches being burnt. So this is actually a bit of a serious topic, this. We're treating it a little bit frivolously, but James, as we talk about, the Punjab is actually home to many religions, whether it's Hindus, whether it is Christians, or it is, of course, Sikhs. And when we talk about Khalistan will be a nation, when it's established, that will welcome people of all religions. There will be no discrimination. Unfortunately, I think Guru Stock Investing is a little bit zealously promoting the Christian faith. Christians, actually, moderate Christians, are very understanding and tolerant of other religions. It's when you get to the extremist end. Interestingly, there is a link to Amritpal Singh here. Amritpal was accused of being anti-Christian when in fact he wasn't. He was actually calling out the Christian fundamentalists, the Christian extremists. That's right. Who unfortunately were following this line saying, we will convert everybody in the Punjab into Christianity, and if you don't convert, you will be condemned to hellfire and damnation. That's not the sort of religion that certainly I respect. That is not certainly any religion that I would promote. Unlike the Sikh religion, which, as we often say, the Sikh religion has to be one of the most tolerant religions because it does not actively go out to recruit people to its religion. It just sets out its message and it says, if you like it, join us. If you don't, then we respect you equally. But if you are a Christian or a Muslim, then we will, our job, our mission is to make you a better Christian, a better Muslim or whatever, or even a better Hindu. That's the difference, and that difference stands very starkly, James.
Absolutely. And we could even take it a step further, Angus, in that when you look back at the Sikh Empire, not only did they encourage and welcome all religions, they made sure that the representatives from the different religions and backgrounds actually had a seat at the table and helped with the guiding principles of the nation. So I think, or of the empire. So I think that is something that really encourages me about Khalistan, is not just the welcoming and the tolerance, but the invitation to be a part of something.
Indeed, and John Calo's comment, which follows, is a great comment, and thank you for this, John Calo. And you say, although Sikhs are always at peace with humanity, and this really just follows on from what we're saying, disturbances are continually happening from one side of fact. In other words, it's not the Sikhs who are causing the problems, it's actually usually the other side. A little support is needed by NATO to build a Sikh homeland, which is from the bottom of China to the Gujarat seaport. Well, okay, well, first of all, you're saying that Khalistan should actually stretch from China, Ladakh, all the way down to the Indian Ocean, taking control of Gujarat as well. I think that may be a little bit ambitious. Absolutely, that would be fantastic, for many strategic reasons. I think certainly, I think everybody in Khalistan would support that. In practice, I think it's probably unlikely that's ever going to happen, but certainly a nice aspiration. The other point here, though, is an interesting one. NATO support. Well, first of all, would Khalistan be part of NATO? Would it request to join NATO? That would be a very good thing to do. I don't know. I think that may be a step too far, certainly in the early days. I don't think India would accept it. Would Pakistan? Probably not. China certainly would resist it because, of course, Khalistan would sit uncomfortably close to China. So, but certainly the support of NATO, even behind the scenes, would be very welcome, James. I don't know if Khalistan would actually become part of NATO.
Absolutely, but we've also spoken about an alliance that they could form once the balkanization of India happens, that there could be room for an alliance there, which I think could be even more powerful and offer more leadership. So I think that the principle is great. I think that the principle and the key point is right spot on. I don't think it necessarily will be NATO. I think that there will be a different alliance formed, though, Angus.
Indeed. So a fascinating concept and a fascinating topic of discussion there, John Calo. Thank you for that comment. Sharon Singh says, yes, 100% sent home. Now, this is in response to basically the thumbnail, which I enjoyed putting together, I have to say, that said, bye-bye, Mr. Modi. And really, it was also not just bye-bye, Mr. Modi, it was bye-bye Godi Media, who tried to, if you excuse the pun, to goad Donald Trump into condemning Khalistan. And Donald Trump basically sent them packing, saying, no, sirree, you're not going to get me to commit to that one. So absolutely, as you say, they were sent home frustrated and unable to secure the propaganda that they tried to get there, James.
Absolutely. And, it's all about sometimes tongue in cheek, but it also resonates with another subsect. So it's all good, Angus.
Indeed it is. And Satnam Singh says, when is Surinder going to be on the show, since it's such a good show? That's a very good question. Surinder does take charge of our Punjabi language channel, and he has his Talking Punjab show, which is a fascinating watch. So I do refer anybody who speaks Punjabi, do watch his shows. They're great shows. Unfortunately, James and I just sit there and not understanding a word of it, but I'm sure it's a very good show. Yeah. But should we have Surinder on the show? That's a great suggestion. Maybe one day we will bring Surinder on. Surinder has actually interviewed me on his channel some time ago. I think it was back last year. Maybe we need to reciprocate that. Maybe we need to get Surinder on our show, James. Maybe we'll do that one day.
That sounds like a great idea. And I know that we also get comments once in a while about what happened to Surinder. And just for notice there that if you're referring to his show not being on certain days, it's just a short break that he takes every now and again. Everybody needs a day off. So don't panic. He hasn't left the station or anything. He just may be on a few days off if you don't see him. So don't panic. He's still here and going strong.
Indeed. And SAK says, my favourite war cry for the community is Bole Sonihal, Sat Sri Akal, and the same team. Marvellous. And the final comment, the sign-off comes from TC, one of our regulars. Great reporting, well, great comment, and thank you to all our commenters as usual. And yes, you refer to a very good speech from Prince Harry. In Kalyug, never forget, Raj Karega Khalsa, Khalistan Zindabad. The fight for basic human rights, religious freedom and self-determination is essential. Indeed it is, not only for Sikhs, but all minorities that are oppressed and denied of this. In true Invictus spirit, let the games go on, James.
Absolutely. And I'm just going to leave that comment where it is because it said it all, Angus.
It certainly does. A fabulous comment to finish on. Thank you, TC, for that. But that does bring Perspectives to a close for another day. Please don't forget to keep those comments coming in. They've been fabulous, some really interesting comments and very informative comments as usual. We do learn an awful lot from your comments, so do please keep them coming in, and they're always appreciated. Even the short ones, and we do read every single one. Don't forget that you can message us directly, as many of you have done, at message@satellitetv.com, so do keep those coming as well. Thank you for those. But in the meantime, it is a goodbye from me, and it is a goodbye from James.
Stay safe, everyone.
Thanks so much for watching Perspectives. We will see you next time.